I didn't want to be a victim. First of all, it's like the lowest vibration you can feel. Who wants to feel like that? And when I started to feel like I'm going to be fine, I'm going to use the story. And some people criticized me. My own family were like, don't tell all your deep, dark secrets. Don't tell all your warts into the world. And I was like, no, I'm going to. And it's helped people. So why wouldn't I continue to do that? I want to be a vine. I don't want to be a victim. And that is the choice.
Thanks for coming. And yeah, I think the place to start with your story is at the beginning or as close to it as we can. So I was wondering if you could walk me back all the way to St. Louis. You were 11 years old and getting into modeling. Tell me about what that experience was like.
Yeah. So I do talk about this a little bit, but when you are that young and focused on doing something, it comes from somewhere. Right? You can't be 11 and know what your career is going to be. I mean, you can, but it's an idea.
Yeah.
And if you have support, then it can become more of a profession. It wasn't my family's first choice. It wasn't my parents' desire. A lot of times when you see young pageant girls or young models, it's really the parents that are driving that. My parents were not driving it. It was something that I wanted to do. I was being asked in society, hey, you're a really pretty girl. Why don't you do this? You should be a model. And so I thought to myself, okay, well, I'd like to make some extra money and I would like to stay busy. I always like to stay busy. And I knew that at that age. And so I pursued it with a bit of hesitation from my family. Ultimately, as you can see, I'm still alive after everything I've gone through. I must have a lot of grit and determination. And so you can look back on that 11-year-old girl really pushing to do something in the world that she felt was important. And a lot of people would say modeling isn't important. I would disagree with that. And I can explain later in my story. But ultimately, my parents gave in and it became a 40-year career. Which,
wow.
Yeah, I kept doing it.
So, I mean, you said she had a dream as an 11-year-old. You had an idea and a dream to accomplish something. Looking back, how does the dream and the reality line up for you? Yeah.
Well, okay. Here's something that I don't talk about.
Let's do it. Sure.
There was a lot of hurdles. Obviously, originally there was a hurdle with my family. My parents were very busy. I had 4 sisters total, and there wasn't a lot of time for this. And there were other hurdles: body perfection, body dysmorphia. I thought I was not thin enough, not pretty enough, which a lot of women go through. And so I developed an eating disorder. Ultimately, I was hospitalized for that when I was a sophomore in college. And so I hid it for almost a decade until I couldn't control it anymore. And I came back from college and I said to my family, I have a real problem and I need help. And so they were very supportive, and we went to the hospital and they kept me for about a month. And ultimately that was my healing, part of my healing. I continued in the industry after that, but with a different perspective. And I would say that it took decades later for me to even change more from my perspective, and we can talk about that later. But there were these little shifts throughout my career that ultimately led me to stay in the business, now at over 50 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me about some of those if you'd like.
So obviously the first shift was when I was hospitalized for the eating disorder, and I learned a lot about self-care and, when what you focus on, you become. So if I was focused on being a certain size, a certain look, and everything that I just said is external, right? Has nothing to do with who at my core I was. Mm-hmm. Everything that I was focused on was on the outside. So people age, you can't predict your health, right? You can't predict what you look like ever, really. I mean, you can try, you can work out, a lot of people are taking drugs these days to get thin, and that's none of my business, but it's now, really, prevalent in society. And so you have a say in some of it, right? I mean, I can
Yeah.
bleach my hair blonde and I can cut it short if I want. I can grow it long. Some people don't have any hair, like I didn't have any hair during chemo. So there's certain things that you can control.
Yeah.
But I can't control if the client that I'm working for in, Barcelona, Spain is going to pick me or a different blonde.
Mm.
I can't control if Guess is going to pick me to do their campaign or a different girl. I can't control Victoria's Secret to use me or a different girl. And so it's a gamble. And
Sure.
ultimately, those types of gambles that I was putting myself into hurt my self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Those clients didn't hurt my self-esteem. I was so focused on what job I was going to get next that when I didn't get the job, it hurt my self-esteem. That was my doing. That wasn't anybody else's doing. Now, if I had focused on doing introspective work and learning how to create more of a character, my character inside, and learning about who I was, not about what I look like, then I think I would have had a bit of a smoother life. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed with cancer and all of my beauty was taken away. All of it. I was 90 pounds wet. I had no hair on my body. I had no breasts anymore. And it was like, now what?
Yeah.
And so those radical stops was what really forced me to learn who I was. And in those original moments, I was paralyzed with fear, paralyzed with devastation, and I couldn't understand how to move forward because my focus, going back to the focus, was so determined about everything external.
Wow.
And so the roller coaster would continue if I continued to focus on that stuff. Instead, I chose to change my focus on the inside, figure out who I was.
I love that. You talked about figuring out who you were, and when you told your very first part of your story about how you're like, I knew that I wanted some extra money, which I think that's pretty common for kids, especially. And you're like, and I also knew that I wanted to stay busy.
Yeah.
My thought of that was, well, I think that's really introspective that you knew that about yourself at 11, that you needed something to keep yourself busy. So this self-identity, this self-identity, do you think this is something that, let me rephrase it. It seemed to me like your self-identity, has been something that's there. Yeah. Yes, exactly. That it's been something like a seed that you've been working on for, nurturing is the right word, that a seed that you've been working on nurturing for quite a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to talk about this later, but if it would be okay, I'd love to go back a little bit to the time in St. Louis and hear just a little bit about your early experience. Do you remember your first job, your first modeling job?
I remember a series of first jobs. And
okay.
I remember, so I did a lot actually with the Cardinals. So ironically, because Cardinals baseball had catalogs back then, right? Everything is online now. But if you think about 40 years ago, there wasn't the internet, it wasn't online. And so they had physical copies, magazines. And so I did a lot in St. Louis for the Cardinals. So I'd wear their jackets and their shoes and their hats, and I would be the catalog girl. So I did a lot of catalogs. I did Target catalogs. I did J. Crew. I ended up in my young teens, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, doing a lot of lingerie, bathing suits. So like JCPenney and Dillard's and Neiman Marcus and all Nordstrom's and all these major brands, they would have catalogs. They would have billboards. They would have magazines and those. And I was typically in those. So I was what I would consider to be a working model. It wasn't editorial. I had a very commercial look. I was a working commercial model, which by the way was better because the editorial girls who were on the cover of Vogue magazine, they didn't work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They had extreme looks, right? And they did covers of magazines. There's not a cover of a magazine every day. So we were the working girls. We were the working models.
Okay. So the difference between I'm such this is
Yeah.
so far out of my realm of understanding. But so a working model would be, if I was looking at a magazine, the editorial model is the one on the cover, and then the working models would be the one like in the advertisements within the magazine.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You went from like, I'm kind of interested by of this idea of having a dream and then really essentially achieving it in a pretty short period of time, like at least your first rung of it, your first iteration of it. Do you remember the feeling that you had when you showed up to your first series of jobs? Was it what you expected? Was like, yeah, this is what I wanted. This is really cool. It feels like what I thought it was going to feel like to be working as a model or seeing yourself in print.
Yeah, it was confusing because, I liked to work. I showed up on time, which by the way, I think was attributes to part of the longevity of my career. People could trust me in the industry. My agent could trust me. The booker could trust me. The photographer could trust me. They knew that I would show up. They knew I would be on time. They knew I would stay to finish the job. That wasn't always the case with other models. And so I think that when I was first on set, it was much harder than I thought. And I was still doing my schoolwork. So if I wasn't in class, I was still doing my schoolwork on the shoot. So I would be in makeup for a couple hours. They would be working on my hair, my makeup, and I would be with a book, with my backpack. But that was my choice. I mean, I studied. I was responsible. But I think that, part of that young girl was not just looking for extra money, was looking to be doing in the world instead of being in the world. There's a difference. And I've learned that the hard way. You don't have to accomplish something for somebody to love you. You just have to be who you are. But so much in our society is about doing. I mean, what's the biggest nowadays? What does everybody say? I'm busy. Gosh, how are you doing? I'm busy.
So busy.
I'm producing. I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And it's like, when can we just be? Yeah. And so I think I skipped that. I don't think that I ever was comfortable just being until later years. That's not flattering. Not something that was good about who I was. I felt somewhere inside of me that I needed to keep producing, to keep doing. And when I got a bigger, better job, a bigger, better modeling contract, that wasn't enough. I needed the next one and the next one. And so it wasn't like I was being satisfied inside. I kept seeking outside sources to fill me up. That never works.
Yeah. You're so true. So that lesson that you learned, you said you learned it much later. Do you think that do you think it's a lesson that can be learned as a kid or, even as a young adult, that your self-worth, I'm paraphrasing here, so tell me if I'm misunderstanding, but essentially that your self-worth is not tied to what you produce, that your self-worth is just because who you are?
Correct. I think that it's harder now in society because of social media.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I think I say wow because not like, oh yeah, shocker. Social media is, everybody knows about the dangers and the pitfalls and the adverse effects of social media for sure. The reason I say wow is just, I think it's interesting to hear that it's harder today.
I can't.
But you think it's so, yeah.
I can't. I'm in my 50s. I can't imagine being a young adult, especially a young girl.
Oh my gosh, so true. Yeah.
And it's this constant comparison, which is so toxic. And so I think it would be more challenging, but I also think that people like myself who are older and who are wise and who have been in this type of industry focused on your external for so long can bring some wisdom to the table and can teach. I love speaking at young in high schools and stuff. That's one of my favorite things to do because you can get them young and teach them that who you are is that's all that's important. It's not the doing and the producing and the posting and the likes, because at the end of your life, everybody's life, You're not going to say, gosh, I'm so glad I had 100,000 followers. You're not going to say that I'm so glad I posted that video of being at the Washington Commanders, training practice. It doesn't matter. Those are highlights and fun and blips on the screen. But what matters is serving, giving back, using your pain to help other people. And ultimately, how you love and who you love. That's what matters.
Yeah, I agree. So what's the way that we help, that you talked about serving? What's the way that we help people get that message? Is it just about educating them about that, your worth doesn't need to be tied to your production, or is it?
It's really hard to teach.
Yeah.
It's really hard to say that. I mean, I think the reason I wrote my book is because of that. I lived a very fluid society life. I lived what society would call a successful life. I was so lonely and so broken inside. Success from society looks different than personal success. And once I realized that all the accolades from society really meant nothing, that's when you really do the introspective work and go, okay, well, if that means nothing, and I don't want to keep staying on this roller coaster of life because I'm determined, my life is determined, my worth is determined by outside sources, then I got to figure out, where is my value?
Yeah.
And for me, my value rests in God, my religion, my faith. And that is level ground. That is concrete. The quicksand of life, right? I mean, think about, especially right now when people are getting canceled and this is in vogue and now this is out. Now, we're focused on this in society. Now it's shifting. That's just a roller coaster set up for failure. Who wants to be on that slide? I don't.
Yeah.
So, but it's what you tell yourself. It's how you speak to yourself. I mean, when I was at the highest of my career, technically, I was telling myself I was ugly, I was fat, I had no value. Who would care about me? Who would love me? Who would hire me? I can't believe that I work for a modeling agency. How did they take me? I mean, right? Then at 41, I have no hair. I have no breasts. I have no society, right? Whatever I thought was my value in society. I had more people love me, more people show up for me than ever in my life. It didn't matter what I looked like. It didn't matter what I had. It was who I was that they were showing up for. And I didn't have to be transactional. I didn't have to do anything for those people to show up.
That you learn a lot. You learn a lot about who your friends are when you see people who show up for you in a time like that, right? I think I like that. Something that stood out to me. Sorry, go ahead. Please.
Well, and nobody's going to go through life unscathed.
Yeah.
Nobody. So pick people that you think will show up during the good times and the bad.
Yeah.
Right?
For
You're
sure.
going to need them.
Yeah. I think, you're right. That's a great piece of advice. Something that that stood out to me that you were saying a second ago was about success. And I think I have this personal, I've been thinking a lot recently about just how we define success. And when people say, "Well, I achieved some success," that almost could be replaced with in the sentence with, "I achieved I made a bunch of money." Success almost always equals money.
In society.
In society. Yeah. In society. That's the way it's referred to if you read about it online. Like, oh, this person, let's say, you've been really successful in your life, which usually means you have a bunch of money. That's, that money might come from other places. It might be because, oh, hey, you bought a bunch of real estate. You built a big business or whatever, but that's almost always what it is. And I think that's fundamentally the wrong way that we're thinking about success. I think that we need to reframe how we think about it, and that success is not tied to money. Because like you said, no one ever says that at the end of their life. No one ever cares about how much money they made.
Well, we need to teach people that success isn't tied to anything outside of us.
That's so much better. Yeah. Tell me more about that though, please.
if you deem your success based on your money, okay, that's your opinion. If
Yeah,
I
that's a great point.
if I deem my success based on how many people I can help and inspire and serve, that's my success. But society is saying, if you buy this on this billboard, if you buy this, or if you drive this car, or if you have this many followers, society is pushing a narrative, I think is what you're saying. And we're following that narrative.
Yeah.
If you decide not to follow that narrative and you base your success on money, it's still valid, right? You can feel that way. I just know that the end of my life, you can't take it with you. You're not bringing your money with you. There's no U-Haul behind the hearse. So I'm not going to base my success on anything outside of me anymore. And I have a movie about my life. Many people would say, you've been wildly successful. I'm wildly successful because I get to serve. I get to inspire. I get to help people. And in my opinion, I'm doing my job. That's all that matters to me. My movie is not about me. My movie is about changing the narrative of cancer in film from a diagnosis and death, which is what the formula has been for 50 years, to survival. And I'm trying to change that. That's not about monetary success. That's about really putting myself in a very vulnerable position in the world and putting my story very much out there. And by the way, it's not always flattering. I'm not putting a very flattering story out there and saying this needs to be changed. The formula that Hollywood has used for decades about how they're showing cancer is outdated. It's fear-based, and I vehemently reject it. But I didn't wait for anybody else to change it. I said to myself, I'm going to find a way to change it. Now, does that make me successful because I have a movie? No, what makes me successful, in my opinion, is the fact that I'm trying to change something that needs to be changed.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, I like the way that you reframe that around it's an empowering kind of lens shift there to think about it to think about success as you get to define it. And that you're right. That's the takeaway, that everyone gets to plot their own path and define what they want out of their own life and make their own choice.
Let me give you one.
It could be money. I like that. Yeah, please.
Let me give you one further. So society, right, would say to me when I was at the height of my modeling career, working for major brands, she's successful. And if I had asked myself if I was successful, I would have said, no, I feel depleted. I feel lonely. I feel uncertain. I feel insecure. But I didn't stop to think about that. I didn't stop to do the introspective work. I was forced to stop during illness, which is when I really figured it out. But if we ever have opportunities of stop, right? For me, it was illness or changes of career or things like that. And we say to ourselves, okay, this is a defining moment in my life. How am I going to move forward? And what have I done wrong? And what have I done right? That's good introspective work. And it was during that time of really being completely stopped, right? For 15 months, I went through 28 rounds of chemo. I couldn't function. I couldn't take care of my children. I couldn't take care of my family. And I was a wife and a mother, and those things defined me. And I couldn't do my job. And so that's a certain level of insecurity. I have children in this world and I can't take care of them. That felt really, I felt very guilty about that. But the truth was, there should be no guilt or shame in that. That was a season of my life that I couldn't control, and other people showed up to help my children. They were being taken care of. But when I was strong enough and capable enough and healthy enough, and I went back to being their mother, then I could teach my own children, I wasn't forsaking you. God wasn't forsaking you. I was trying to take care of you, and I couldn't. And we had other people fill in the gap.
You mentioned when you were describing that time in your life that there was an opportunity to I'm paraphrasing, but to do some self-introspection. And two specific points you said, I believe. Was that was that something that happened was that something intentional that you did during that time? Or was it something that just you learned after the fact?
It was very intentional because I went into my diagnosis so emotionally paralyzed and so afraid. I was seeing a therapist every single day. I could not get out of that emotional paralysis. And I said to myself, if I survive this illness, I can't live like that anymore. I have struggled with insecurity and feeling like I have to produce in the world and I'm exhausted. And it didn't work. I felt so alone. So I'm going to try it a different way. I got to figure out a different way to live. And so my foundation changed. Like I poured into the Bible. I poured into reading scriptures. I poured into Bible studies. I poured into people who could teach me about faith and about God and the tenets of that instead of society. And what I found was realize that I could stay in this emotional paralysis and be fear-based and watch these movies about cancer and think that I'm going to die because that's what they're telling me. Or I could stand on the security that faith was more important than society. And whatever happened, like I couldn't control whether I was going to live or die. But what I could control was showing up with courage. And instead of showing fear, I was showing courage, even on days I didn't feel that courage. But if I could keep showing courage, then maybe eventually it would stick. And ultimately, I felt great courage and felt great self-worth and great self-love because I was focusing on something different. I wasn't focused on the blonde hair, the breasts, the modeling job. I was focused on faith, and that's different.
How do you show courage when you don't feel courageous?
That's a good question. It's like looking in the mirror when somebody says to you, you really need to have self-love. And you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, I love you. And it's like, I can't even look in the mirror and say that. It's so hard. So what did I do? Right? I put a little picture of me as a child and I put it on the mirror. And I would look at that little girl every day and say, I'm going to protect you. And what happened was, even though I didn't know how I was going to protect her, I eventually figured it out because I kept saying it. And so it was my mindset. And then I would ultimately look in the mirror and say, okay, I love you. That was really hard for me for a long time. So I did the same thing with courage. I woke up, I got out of bed. I would go to these chemo appointments, not shaking. I would rely on borrowing my friends' courage. They filled in the gap until I could develop my own. And ultimately, the more I practiced courage, the more I let go of fear, the more I put my focus on faith, I was, getting rid of the insecurity. I was getting rid of the fear, and that courage was building. It took a long time, but it's what you focus on.
I like that.
Then I was able to lend my courage to other people. I was able to say I'll give you an example. When I went back into modeling after my diagnosis, which I never imagined I would go back into modeling, I didn't want to. I was like, my career's over. It's not important for me. I'm going to be a public speaker. I wrote a book. I was trying to help people in different ways. But ultimately, when my chest was excavated and I had breast implant illness and I came out of the hospital during COVID with a concave chest, which was a whole different kind of hell, I eventually physically healed from that. And I called my modeling agency and I said, you know what? I'm getting messages from people around the world about how insecure they feel about having a concave chest, and I need to help them. So I'd like to come back to modeling and walk in New York Fashion Week and walk in Miami Swim Week in a bathing suit and work with brands like Victoria's Secret and show them that my beauty was never dissected because I lost my chest. Their beauty is never negated because they don't have breasts. And my modeling agency said no. And I was like, okay. So I gracefully said, all right, we're going to part ways. And I called my manager and I said, I need you to help me get into New York Fashion Week. And it's a long story, but it took about a year. And then 5 designers said yes to what I was trying to do. Then I ultimately partnered with Victoria's Secret as a breastless model for them. I went and modeled in Miami Swim Week season after season in a bathing suit without a chest. And I showed people, women, that their beauty had nothing to do with an illness, had nothing to do with their scars. It wasn't negated.
Yeah.
Where I was whole. That made a big splash in the world. So I was using a career that I had for decades in a different way. I often feel like I had that career my whole life setting me up to use it to help other people because I already had a platform.
Yeah. Was, something that the start was, you were saying how you reached out to some, did you say designers or modeling houses, and 5 responded? That feels like a high result. Is that a lot to get 5 responses that wanted to support you in this?
It was, because I think, first of all, if that had happened, if I'd done that 30 years ago, nobody would have said yes. Our society in that regard is changing. The modeling industry has shifted. And so they said, we want to support what you're trying to do to help other women. Mm-hmm. So they said yes. Again,
that's neat.
20 years ago would have never happened. I mean, the fact that Victoria's Secret said yes, that's the largest lingerie brand in the world. Yeah. But again, it wasn't like my manager called them and said, hey, Christine Handy wants to come back into the modeling space. We think that you guys should partner with her. They were like, yes. No, that didn't happen. I met with them in New York. We had meaningful conversations. Then I didn't talk to them for a while. We kept pursuing them. We kept bugging them, driving them crazy. This is a really important collaboration. And ultimately they said yes, but you can't stop. You have to keep going. You can't, if somebody says no, I never take it really as a no. Yeah. I just keep saying, well, there's got to be a way. I'll figure out a different way to get there, but I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
So many people quit in the middle. You just got to find a different door.
Did you have one of those times when you were in the middle and you were like, this isn't working? I need to do something different.
Like a theme in my life. Like if I did quit. When I was first diagnosed with cancer, I did quit. I was like, I'm done. I'm exhausted. I have no self-esteem. My career's over. My personal life was falling apart. I was like, I'm done. I don't even care if I go to chemo. I'm done. And then my friends were like, no, you're not done. There's great purpose in what you're about to go through. This is going to be a season of your life. You're going to survive it. And then you're going to teach other people. And I was like, what? There's no way.
Yeah.
And now 13 years later, the impact that I've had, not from me, from them teaching me, from a God that had a reason to use me to help other people, is now helping so many. It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about helping people do it differently than how I did it. I did it wrong.
Yeah. I have 2 questions and I'm struggling with which one to ask. A theme that I'm hearing here a little bit is around your pain and trauma being a teacher to you, and not only stopping at you, but to others. How did you discover that your pain and trauma could become a service to you and then to others?
Well, I feel like my story was a bit extreme, right? I mean, how many people do you know that were modeling for 30 years? I mean, I think there's a lot of people.
I know one now. I know one person now who's modeling. You.
I know, so, but I think a lot of people online are like, oh, I'm an Instagram model. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about working as a working model, working for an agency. That's their career, right?
Yeah.
To go from that and to be, I've had other illnesses too, not just breast cancer, and to be completely dependent on everything external as a career, as a focus, as my self-worth. To go from that to being completely unraveled, right? Yeah. All of that is taken away, pruned, right? I think of it as pruning now.
Interesting. Yeah.
And to rebuild in a completely different way. It's pretty extreme. And so when I look back, I think It had to be extreme in order to help this amount of people. And when I was going through the devastation of learning that I did this life wrong, I was so dependent and tethered to society. And by the way, there's no shame and guilt in that. I just focused on the wrong thing. I've given myself self-care and self-love and grace. I'm not mad at myself for doing it. I'm proud of myself for changing. And I'm not embarrassed to share my dark, difficulties. I'm not embarrassed to say that I was hospitalized for an eating disorder. I'm not embarrassed about saying I was emotionally paralyzed when I was diagnosed and I felt like my life was over. It's when we tell the dark stories that people are actually can relate to it, because the highlight reels that we put out into the world are bullshit. The stuff on social media, the highlight reels, the trips that everybody's looking at, and they're comparing their life to that and feeling bad because they're not getting to do that. That's not fair. So we need more stories of honesty and true vulnerability in order to heal from our own stuff. Yeah. So the moment that you're going back to your question, the moment that I felt like I'm so stuck in being a victim and this feels dirty and gross, and I'm never going to be a vine if I'm staying in this emotional paralysis and being a victim. Why me? Why did my beauty go away? Why did I have to lose my breast? Why did I get breast implant illness? All this stuff. That's being a victim. I didn't want to be a victim. First of all, it's like the lowest vibration you can feel. Who wants to feel like that? And when I started to feel like I'm going to be a vine, I'm going to use the story. And some people criticize me. My own family were like, don't tell all your deep, dark secrets. Don't tell all your warts into the world. And I was like, no, I'm going to. And it's helped people. So why wouldn't I continue to do that? I want to be a vine. I don't want to be a victim. And that is the choice. That's the line.
I like that. Your analogies of pruning in the vine, it reminds me of that feels like a little bit of scripturally adjacent. And you mentioned your faith. Well, so first is that, let me rephrase it. You mentioned your faith earlier. Is that, and how you kind of leaned on it, not kind of how you really, really leaned on it, leaned into it, when things got hard. Was that a new discovery for you? Or was that something where you was that something that had been like in your childhood you were raised with and then you kind of rediscovered it? Or was this brand new for you?
Yeah, I was raised in a Christian home, but I had gotten, I didn't stay with that foundation. I kind of brushed it aside like, oh, I've got it. But, I know that there's a God. And when my friends, this is a great story, when my friends would ask me to do Bible studies, I would say, no, I've got Pilates. I can't go on Wednesday mornings to Bible study because I have to work out. Because think about that. My focus was not on faith. It was on what I looked like. Right?
Yeah.
Those are the focuses. So when I was down to nothing, what was I going to focus on?
Yeah.
So for sure, I wanted my hair to grow back, but that wasn't the only focus. I wanted to do life differently, like I said. And so I had to find a different foundation. And the foundation that was modeled to me from my friends was God is the anchor, not society. And so what does that mean? Well, you should have gone to the Bible studies, but now your Bible study will teach you. They came in and they took everything that didn't represent life out of my house. I was diagnosed.
Like physically? Like literally took things that didn't represent life out of your house? Really?
I was diagnosed on October 1st.
Okay.
It was the first day of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but it was also Halloween.
Yeah.
The season of Halloween. They took every skull and crossbone out of my house. They took every witch out of my house. Everything that did not represent life, everything that represented demonic stuff, they took it out of my house. And they replaced it with plants or something that had represented life. Somebody planted a tree in my front yard, represented life. One of my friends, when I was going to chemo one day, I came back. I had my mother on one arm, my father on the other arm. I could barely walk. I was so sick. And they walked me in my house, and everywhere that I could see was a scripture. They pasted 250 scriptures around my house on sticky notes. Those represented life. Those verses represented life. So they were showing me, they were modeling me a different focus, and it stuck. I ended up not playing secular music anymore. I played faith-based music in my house with my children. I started listening to Christian podcasts, and I reframed my mind. And that's now 13 years of this focus. I feel like my character is finally showing, and I feel like, I can be such a light in the world because I'm not filled with the darkness that I had, the fear, the insecurity, the dependency on society.
Wow. Those are some really good friends, and bold too.
Exactly why it's important to figure out who you surround yourself with. What are they telling you? What are they saying? Are they lifting you up? Are they cheering you on? Or are they criticizing you? Or are they tearing you down? There are mean girls out there. There are mean men out there. You got to pick wisely because you're going to need them. Like I said, nobody goes through life unscathed.
Yeah, that's true. I like that. Well, thanks for breaking that down for me. On your faith, something else you mentioned was, stood out to me was you're talking about being a victim as the lowest vibration, I think is what you said. Is that like, are you, tell me, that phrase just stood out to me as vibration. Tell me, can you unpack that a little bit for me? What it means?
I think some people in the world, they don't believe in God. That's fine. Yeah. I can only speak about how I got through things.
Sure.
Which is authentic to my story.
Yeah.
I think some people's language is vibration. So joy is a high vibration. Shame is one of the lowest vibrations.
That makes sense.
I try to include, all the different languages of the world in when I
like
speak.
It.
But if you think about it, when you have felt shame in your life, you feel like a mask, like hiding, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's uncomfortable. When you feel joy, you feel open and your heart's open and you feel bigger, right? That's a brighter vibration.
Yeah.
Shame is like dark, low vibration. I don't want to feel shame.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that's true. And I think that the reference to the word vibration to at least to me, and then a reference to a God or anything. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive, by the way. I think they go together. So that's just what I was curious about. Yeah. I'd like to go back for just a minute. This is earlier, but earlier you were talking about how your definition of success had changed, and you were talking about service, and you described service in two ways. You described it as a calling and a job. And I thought that's really, really interesting. And I'm wondering if you could tell me about how that, and I can see that in your life now. I can see you living that. But I was wondering if you could tell me about how that change came about.
Well, I was very self-serving for a very long time. I was a consumer. I was very materialistic. What can I buy? I was trying to fill myself up with things, a bigger modeling job, a purse, a bag, a car, a certain address, a relationship, whatever. I was trying to fill this void inside. That is self-serving.
Yeah.
When you become a vine, you serve others. It's not for self. I'm not on this podcast for me. I didn't do the movie for me. I didn't write the book for me. It wasn't about me. It was to use the pain in my life and the mistakes I made to help other people, to give them hope, to show my post-traumatic wisdom. And so I think, again, breaking down the trauma, it's always a choice. Like you chose to have me on the show. Why do you have me on the show? Not because I'm materialistic and self-serving. You have me on the show because there's takeaways that you think your audience can use to help them serve a better life. Serving to me is a lifestyle. I get up every morning and I serve, whether it's on social media, and I show people cancer doesn't have to stop you. I had breast cancer at the age of 41. My life wasn't over. But some people feel like it is, right? I'm not talking about I'm talking about women that have, or men who have cancer and then they have a long life or a short life ahead of them. How do you live? I want to live every single day really well before I die. I'm not saying I want to go buy more handbags to fill myself up. I want to serve and help other people. That's a lifestyle. I also get to serve when I speak. I get to serve mentoring breast cancer patients. I get to serve by putting a movie out into the world that is about survival. It doesn't negate anything in society. It helps people. I get to serve by being a breastless model. There's so many ways I get to serve, and I choose to use my pain to serve every day.
I love
That's
that.
living a life of service.
I love that. Thank you. That's really cool. So when was it that you realized that you decided you wanted to write a book?
I would say about halfway through chemotherapy, I started to be meticulous about taking notes about what I was going through and the mental and emotional shifts that were going on in my life. And because if you do something for 41 years, most people would say that you can't change that. That's so ingrained in you. I beg to differ. Great illness and great pruning can change anybody if you choose that. And so I started to take mental notes and really write stuff down and save certain things that were going on in my life. I take pictures of the scriptures that were all over my house. And so that would remember that stuff. Because when you have chemo, that type of chemo, you forget a lot. I had terrible chemo brain and it was very challenging after chemo for a long time to remember anything. So I started to take meticulous notes, hoping that there would be an opportunity for me to write the story. The other thing that happened during my chemotherapy was Bravo TV, which is now in 2011-12, started to show a lot of shows about women tearing each other apart. That was their focus. Mm-hmm. And they did a really good job of it. And they became very successful doing it. I couldn't stand it. That wasn't part of my life. It's not how I lived my life with my friends, and it wasn't how my friends treated me. And so I thought they were doing a disservice. I've called Bravo out a ton of times. Bravo and I are not friends. I think that kind of anger, fear, negation in society is troubling.
Yeah.
I thought if I could put a book out there about women showing up for me and saving a life, maybe that would have an impact. Maybe that could show a different narrative than what Bravo was doing. And that was part of my goal. And it was interesting because when I first went to publishers about my book, many of them said, I would take out the scriptures. You might have a bigger audience. And I said, but that doesn't reflect how I lived my life. I can't take that out. That was part of my journey. And whatever happens with the book is going to happen with the book, with the scriptures, with the authentic story. Well, it's now a movie. So I think it worked out.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of halfway in my chemotherapy where I thought, you know what, this might help somebody.
Still to service though, to service. Yeah. So it sounds like it started as a journal. I'm paraphrasing, but effectively you were just writing things down. Right. Sure. And then it turned into, hey, this is, this could be something for someone else. And you won't be the first person to write a journal and have it,
published
and have it impact a lot of people. I mean, it's kind of, there's a lot to that. I mean, going back a lot of years. So yeah, I like it. How was the whole process of writing a book? Was it what you thought it was going to be? Did it, and getting it published, was it fairly seamless? Was it a struggle?
Nothing was seamless in my life. It's taken me 9 years to do the movie. I think that it was bigger than me. Mm-hmm. And so I think I had some spiritual help because I wasn't trained to be a writer. I think that I had such a big goal to help so many people that I just kept pursuing it, regardless of the impact of the cost it had to me, right? Because it costs something to share a story of pain over and over and over again. It has an impact on me. But I was willing to do it. And it also, some people say, well, was it cathartic? No, not really.
Zero cathartic, huh? Wow.
It wasn't the intention.
Sure.
So no, and I don't think it did, because I put a lot of really vulnerable things in that book that are not flattering, that are really not flattering. And that's hard to do. But again, I did not want to put a highlight reel out there. There's so many highlight reels, and it's hurting people, not helping them. So I think that and also when you're faced with death and then you have an opportunity to live after that, you're like, I'm just going to do whatever I think is right. And if it doesn't work, at least I tried.
Yeah.
Who cares?
I love that.
And I'm not a quitter.
Yeah. It's an interesting comment. I've been thinking about quitting recently. Is quitting ever the right decision, do you think?
80% of people quit in the middle.
Yeah.
When it's hard.
Is that facts according to Christine Handy, or is that like a data you read somewhere?
It's something I know for a fact. I read it.
Wow.
True.
Okay.
And
I believe it. Sounds right. Yeah.
Here's another interesting fact. And by the way, the 20% that keep going tend to be wildly successful. Why? Because 80% quit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's a difference maker. Yeah.
Here's another quote, which is not quote, fact. Every story that you see of trauma, death, has to be negated with 10 stories of hope. So if you're a breast cancer patient and you hear about somebody that's died, you need to hear 10 stories of survival to negate that. 10.
Like in what way? Like the effect of feeling that bad, hearing that bad experience, like on your body, or like just
the effect it has on your body, the effect it has on your hope, the effect it has on your outcome. So here's an example. What do you typically hear? Well, I mean, I can tell you what you typically hear from somebody when you say, I have breast cancer. Oh, yeah. My aunt died of it. Oh, my cousin's brother, he had such and such a cancer, and unfortunately he died. People want to tell you the stories that they have heard. Yeah. The stories they have heard are the ones that people have died. That's what they've heard. So they tell you what they know. And those are the stories of death. And then you're like, oh, I'm going to die. Why? Well, because everybody's telling me all these people that died.
Yeah.
You need 10 stories of, oh, no, my friend, she survived. Oh, no, I know my neighbor survived. Oh, I know this other person survived. You need 10 stories of survival to go, okay, I feel better. Okay, I can handle this. Okay, I can keep going. Okay, I have hope again. And you can see how that can affect you.
Yeah.
Now let's go back to the movie. How many movies of illness, cancer are out there of death?
A lot.
Most.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we negate that? We start making movies of survival.
Yeah.
Somebody's
that's true.
Got to do it.
Yeah. And that is an effective way to get that out there. You talked about the story of, or you gave the example of, hearing from your cousin or whoever else who had a bad experience with an illness or cancer. And that's a one-to-one kind of thing. But if you can increase that to a one-to-many on a really, really high level, like a one to many, 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 and then that's impactful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I always set out to have a big impact. I didn't set out to help one. I set out to help millions. That was the goal.
Even from the beginning? Like when you were
from the beginning.
Yeah.
People say, oh, if it impacts one person, and I was like, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's important for sure, but
that wasn't never my goal. I was like, no, I want to help a ton. I know how women are. We have to help so many.
Yeah. I think that's true. And I mean, why not? Why not set the goal big? I think that's
the worst thing that can happen is you don't reach the goal. Who cares? You tried. Totally.
So this is going back a little bit, but I'm curious if we could, so how did you're modeling all the way through, and you told the story about how you got sick when you were a sophomore in college, which, by the way, I think is interesting. I was thinking about that. It's interesting to me because it was another kind of little data point in my mind about the self-awareness comment that I made earlier. Like, oh, you acknowledged this in yourself that you were not, not healthy and you needed some help. You came back home. What I'm curious about is before that though, actually, how did you end up, did you go to college? You moved out of state, you went to college in Texas. Is that right?
Yeah, I went to SMU, undergrad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Undergrad. So, where'd you go to grad school?
Harvard.
Nice. I've heard of that, I think.
You've heard.
So how did, I might have. It's like a community college, right? So how did you end up going to, how did you end up leaving St. Louis and going to Texas? What was it about Texas that took you there?
It was a bigger modeling market.
Oh, okay.
It was a much bigger market. I could work and go to school at the same time, which I did. Yeah. It was I didn't necessarily think I was a New York model at that point. But Dallas was a much bigger market and I knew I liked SMU. So it worked out really well.
That's nice. That's really neat. And just for what it's worth, by the way, I made the community college comment because I actually did go to community college. So no shade on community college.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's a huge contrast though. What was between, what did you study at Southern Methodist, by the way?
I liked it. It was, actually, it's funny. I applied to 10 schools and that was my safety school. I knew I would get in. Mm-hmm. And, cause I worked really hard in high school. I had probably a 4 point something.
Nice. Yeah.
Came back. I graduated Harvard with a 3.85. So that was
nice. Good. Yeah. That's real good.
So, I was always a doer, right? We're going back to the doing versus being. I was always trying to produce. So I was working really hard at school all the time. I wanted really good grades. But I liked SMU. I liked the community. I was very active in the community. I was in a sorority. I was in a fraternity, little sister. I participated. It was great. Yeah. It was a good experience. I graduated in 4 years and then I ended up staying in Dallas for quite a while.
Okay. Yeah. And what did you study when you were Southern Methodist?
I was a double major, political science and art history.
Okay. And what did you study at Harvard?
I had a master's degree in literature.
Okay. So this makes sense. So you're not like you're unfamiliar with writing when you went time to write this book, I
got my master's degree after I wrote the book.
Oh, really? Well, I take it back. Thanks for correcting me there.
And that's a great story because
I'd love to hear it. Let's hear it. Yeah.
I actually, after chemo, I had 28 rounds of chemo. Mm-hmm. I came out of chemo with very little brain cognitive abilities and very little short-term memory. And so when I would drive my car, I would drive out of my driveway and I would forget which side of the street to drive on.
Oh, man.
It was that extreme.
Wow.
And I would go to doctors and say, I need help with this thing called chemo brain. And some doctors would say it existed and some doctors would say it doesn't exist. It isn't meaningful. And I would really be frustrated because I knew it existed and I knew it from other people, but I also knew it from myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I can't rely on anybody else to fix this. I have to fix it myself. And I was doing puzzles and I was trying to read even a magazine and I couldn't get through the first paragraph. I would read it over and over and over again. And I was so frustrated. And it was hard because I had young kids and I couldn't really help them with their homework. And it just was a cascading effect. And so I said to myself, well, I've been through hopefully the worst, in my life. And why don't I just apply to school? I'll go back to school and retrain my brain because I know that exists. And I thought, well, I'm going to apply to the hardest school I can get into. Because why? Why not? Right? If they say no, they say no. It doesn't matter. Anytime, if you don't try, it's a no. So I figured, well, I'll try. And if Harvard says no, I won't go there. I'll find something else. They said yes. So I went for my first semester and I said to myself, I'm just going to do pass fail because I don't know that I can keep up with the curriculum because I had such bad chemo brain. Ultimately, I passed that semester, but I don't know that anybody had to work harder than I did because I would literally, first of all, I picked literature, right? One of the hardest as far as the English department because you have to read so much and write so much.
Yeah. And if you're struggling with memory, reading isn't helpful if your short-term memory's struggling, like you need recall.
Well, and
that's hard.
My cognitive disability was showing up. And so the time that I had to spend to do this at a time of my life where I didn't have that much time was really challenging. And so relationships were challenged. I had no social life because I was working and I was going to school. That's it. I couldn't do anything else. And it took me 4 years to get my master's degree. And it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. But when I got my degree, my brain was fixed. And so it's one of my most proud moments to get my Harvard degree, my master's degree, because I had to work so hard, but it accomplished everything that I set it out to accomplish.
That's neat. Yeah. Were you living on the East Coast at the time?
Well, it was during COVID. Part of it was during COVID. So I did some of both. Yeah.
Nice. You said you were working during the time too. What were you working modeling at this time? Or what kind of work were you doing?
I was modeling. I'm a public speaker, so I was doing speeches. I work for All American Speakers, so I was doing that. I do a lot of social media stuff. I work for a lot of clients. I have a manager who, we work a lot together. So I was working a lot.
You were plenty busy.
4 different hats. I was promoting my book. I was trying to get my book made into a film. I was trying to raise money to do that. I was trying to find a director to write a screenplay. So I was constantly working.
Wow. Yeah, you had a lot going on.
I had a lot.
That is, yeah.
And I was going through a divorce. So
that adds some complex. Yeah, that adds a lot. There's those stories that I'm hearing you tell, they're associated with some level of difficulty, and all at the end of a little bit of seems like appreciation, gratitude, and also like maybe a sense of accomplishment. Looking back, is there anything in your life that you've had that you're really proud of wasn't just really hard, or do those things that come are the great things in your life? Did they come on the other side of difficulty?
That's a very good question. I'm overall proud of my life. I would say I'm an overcomer. I've made really bad choices to some degree in certain areas, in certain seasons of my life. And I don't think that I would be who I am today without making bad choices. I think I'm most proud of teaching my kids something different than I used to. I used to teach them that, if I bought them something that showed my love, that doesn't have anything to do with it. I show up for my kids differently now. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud to show my kids the love and devotion that God has for them. And so I'm teaching them differently now. And I think I'm most proud of that. I'm showing them courage. So I hope that they can lean on that courage when they go through difficulties in their life. I'm showing how healing takes place, and it's not from coveting things of this world. So I think that that's my greatest accomplishment in life, is showing my kids differently.
That's a great accomplishment. Yeah. Was there how did you come to that realization that of that's what you wanted to teach your kids, and then make that change to say you give the example here of you're like, I wanted to make the change from showing my kids that when I bought them something, that's not how I show them love. I want to show them in the way that I show up for them. And so I think I agree with you, by the way. I think that's important. And I think I just was curious how did you kind of figure that out?
The language is different between me and my kids. Like my son was just here in Wisconsin with my parents and he was leaving yesterday, and I said, I love you. I'm going to pray for travel mercies for you. And he landed in Dallas and he got back and he said, I made it home. And I said, God's provisions. And I would have never said that. I would have been like, I'm glad 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I would have been like, oh, I'm glad American Airlines didn't screw this up. That's a different language.
Yeah.
Right. And That's all you need to do is shift your language. That's a different foundation.
Yeah.
And so that to me is an everyday teaching. It's not just a teaching at Christmas time where I'm showing them something different or buying them something different. Every single day, the language is different.
Yeah. I like that. Was that an intentional shift for you to shift how you speak and shift the language, or?
Oh, yes.
Was this okay.
I knew I taught my kids wrong. I knew it. Because I was so insecure that I was like, oh, I've got to go get this great new bag because that's going to make me feel like I'm something. That's what I taught my kids. If we can get this great luggage or whatever. I mean, I'm exaggerating, right?
But
I'm using
whatever it is.
labels as an exaggeration, but it was true. And I showed them that things of the world, materialism, were important. They're not. And so I'm trying to retrain them to show them what really is important.
I like that. How old are your kids?
They're 25 and 27. They were 13 and 11 when I was diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I like about that is that you can always have an influence on your kids, you know?
I hope so.
And so
really
just remember,
so. Yeah.
I like it. So tell me about the process of making the movie, if you don't mind. You finished the book. Was the book already published when you decided you wanted to make it into a movie, or was it still in process?
Was what
was the book already published when you decided you wanted to make a movie? Okay. So the book is published. And then what I think what I heard you say earlier was that you just realized that you wanted to increase the impact that the story was going to have, one of those positive impact stories effectively. But what I'm wondering around is just the actual process of making a movie. I think that's kind of interesting. I think it's interesting. I mean, where did you start figuring your kind of journey there? Was it a phone call or an email or?
Yeah, it was many of those things. My book was a pivotal start to hopefully it becoming a film. It was always my goal.
Okay.
If I could write the book, I was going to write the book in a way that it could become a film.
Okay.
It was always my intention. It was always my dream. And ultimately the book was published. And about 2 years after it was published, I got a phone call from an entertainment lawyer saying, we would possibly like to commission your book to be a film. And we had several intentional conversations and fruitful conversations. And ultimately those died down. And then another group out of Miami approached me and said, okay, we're going to pump some money into your public persona and make you more of a household name and then announce a film. And in the meantime, we're going to write a screenplay. Well, when they showed me the screenplay, it had nothing to do with my story. And so we gently parted ways. And then ultimately, Ziad Hamza, who's a independent filmmaker, very famous and very accomplished filmmaker, approached me. He had read my book and he reached out to me and said, I think that we can make this together. I think I can write the screenplay and I think we can do this project together. So we ended up hiring an entertainment lawyer to sign a contract between the two of us in 2018. And now it's 2026 and the two of us have ultimately accomplished what we set out to do. It's taken almost 9 years. Yeah. Wow. So it was a horrible process. And more people said, you're just a model. There's no way you're going to get this done. More doors that were shut than ever opened. There were more hurdles than I have ever experienced in my life. It's a very dark, decrepit industry. It is not a welcome you with warm arms. What you're trying to do is heroic. We're going to help you. People tried to stop me every step of the way. Out of ego, out of jealousy, doing something different. It's not their formula. And I just said, you guys can't get in my way. I'm going to find a way to do this because this is right. There's a space in the world that's vacant and somebody's going to fill it. And if you don't fill it, I'm going to fill it.
Yeah.
And that was always my mentality. And so I felt like every hurdle we kept falling forward. It was a hurdle, but somehow we managed to get through it. And we had a small budget, and we found incredible talent who would work with our budget. We found a cast and crew that wanted to be a part of something like this. And so we got it accomplished. And ultimately, when we put it out into society, we went into film festivals. Society said, we like this film. The first festival we were in was the Beverly Hills Film Festival. We won Best Film. First festival, we won Best Film. We went on to do festivals around the world, and we've won 14 awards so far.
Love it.
And now we are coming out into theaters nationwide September 25th.
That's so exciting.
So watch out, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
We're coming.
That's it. I'm really looking forward to seeing it, by the way. I'll buy a ticket.
It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful, first of all, it's an accurate depiction of many women's lives that they go through during a diagnosis. It is obviously my story, and everybody's story is different. But I went through a lot of chemotherapy, and a lot of people go through chemotherapy. It's an accurate description of what goes on. And people want to be seen and heard. And there's so many films about cancer where they just show a diagnosis. They don't show anything about what actually goes on. And then they show a funeral. And none of that should be the only formula. I understand that exists and it does happen, but they're not showing the other side of that. The survivorship exists and happens. Let's show more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important. Why wouldn't we? You know, those stories are...
Because their formula has worked for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you think we have all the same Marvel movies? Like, why is there another Superman right now? Because it's worked. It's successful. They made $300 million in the first weekend. So they're going to keep regurgitating what works for them. At what expense, right? I'm not talking about Spider-Man. It's entertainment for entertainment.
Yeah, anything, sure.
That's totally different. I'm talking about the movies that have an impact, like personal impact. Illness movies. Look at Philadelphia about AIDS. Mm-hmm. He dies. Right? I mean,
true.
Steel Magnolias. She dies.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to, I can think of several where there's death at the end, but I'm trying to think of some where there's survivorship. And I'm sure they're out there, but I can't think of them at the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're about to have another one and I'm excited about it. Let me see this. And I don't want to here. I'm pausing with this question. I don't want to discourage anyone from seeing the movie because I think people are really, from what I can tell, I'm looking forward to seeing it. But here's my question. I'll ask anyway. You tell me if you think it's a bad one. Would you encourage people to read the book first or see the movie first?
I don't think that they're dependent on each other.
Okay.
So if you read the book, it has way more detail of my life. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the movie is an hour and 40 minutes. It's a full feature film. You can't have 30 best friends in it. You have 3.
Yeah.
You can't have all the nuances of what I went through because it's a time restraint.
You just can't. Yeah.
You just can't. So I'd almost encourage you to, watch the movie. I don't know.
It's good. Is there one piece from the book when you're going through the movie at the end, is there part of the story that you wish, oh gosh, I really just wish we could have squeezed that into the movie that wasn't able to get in that stands out to you? Or
I think the important parts are there. I think it's there's one scene when you see the movie, it's the under the table scene. Mm-hmm. That I couldn't even go to the set for because it happened. It exists in my life. It was a pivotal moment in my journey. And I won't tell you what happens, but when you see that scene, you'll understand why maybe I couldn't go to set for that to watch it. But I think that scene was so important for the movie because it's an arc in the film. It's a pivotal moment when there's so much despair that there was a rising right after. It was like, okay, well, this is rock bottom. And now we're going to rise. And so we really show that. And I think it's so important to show the valleys of cancer, because although I wanted to show courage and be a vine, it didn't happen every day. That doesn't happen. You don't personally show up with courage every day in your life. You can't. I don't show up with courage every day of my life. I can't. There are moments of our lives that we just show up and we're like vulnerable or insecure or whatever. It's not 100%.
Yeah.
You can't show 100%. It doesn't exist. So those are important things and scenes in the film that, although they have a cost to me, they're still important.
That under the table scene, when you were in your real life, did you know that was rock bottom?
No.
Did you feel at the moment like, this is it? You didn't realize it till later?
No, but I could see looking back that I needed to go through that.
Yeah.
Everything that happened was, ironically, looking back, it had to be that way. Right? In order to propel me to who I am now. I mean, if you think about your own life, when you've gone through majorly good parts of your life, very good seasons of your life, you don't really remember the details.
Yeah.
You just remember the overall, I was really a good season of my life. When you go through the hard times, you understand the different moments, the difficult moments, and the moments that moved you, the moments that changed you. That's the growth. So it's almost like we look in society, we look at those moments as like, we have to avoid them at all costs. And the truth is, if we don't have them, our character doesn't grow. And we don't get to show our true character. So it's almost like we shouldn't be so afraid of them. We should just go, okay, this is a season of my life and it's going to be a season of growth. What's the growth?
Yeah. I think that's so true. I mean, I have lots of thoughts on that, but yeah, I think you nailed it really well. So in fact, that feels really like a great place. It feels like a great place to wrap this up. I mean, growth, at the end of the day, we're all trying, growth is the whole point, I think. And so I really appreciate Chuck. I appreciate you showing up here today and just sharing this part of your story. I think people are I'm really looking forward to catching the movie, in a few weeks. It's, it's still early August. So depending on when this pushes out, but, yeah, thank you so much for your time, Christine. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, where can they find you? Where's the best place to find you?
I mean, I'm on all socials. I think Instagram is probably my most active, but yeah, and I answer I answer as best as I can. I'm hoping we're going to do kind of a press tour coming up in the month of September to promote the movie. So you'll see me on, hopefully, lots of things to promote the movie.
Looking forward to it. Again, super appreciate it. Thanks so much, Christine. Really, really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm pulling for you. Can't wait to see the movie.
Thank you.